November 2nd, daily meditation. Today's message is about the grief process. To let ourselves wholly grieve our losses is how we surrender to the process of life and recovery. Some experts like Patrick Carnes call the 12 steps a program for dealing with our losses, a program for dealing with our grief. How do we grieve? Awkwardly, imperfectly, usually with a great deal of resistance, often with anger and attempts to negotiate, ultimately by surrendering to the pain. The grief process, says Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, is a 5-stage process: denial, anger, bargaining, sadness, and finally acceptance. That's how we grieve. That's how we accept. That's how we forgive. That's how we respond to the many changes life throws our way. Although this 5-step process looks tidy on paper, it is not tidy in life. We do not move through it in a compartmentalized manner. We usually flounder through, kicking and screaming, with much back and forth movement until we reach that peaceful state called acceptance. When we talk about unfinished business from our past, we are usually referring to losses about which we have not completely grieved. We're talking about being stuck somewhere in the grief process. Usually for adult children and codependents, the place where we become stuck is denial. Passing through denial is the first and most dangerous stage of the grieving, but it is also the first step towards acceptance. We can learn to understand the grief process and how it applies to recovery. Even good changes in recovery can bring loss and consequently grief. We can learn to help ourselves and others by understanding and becoming familiar with this process. We can learn to fully grieve our losses, feel our pain, accept, and forgive, so we can feel joy and love. And the affirmation says, today, God, help me open myself to the process of grieving my losses. Help me allow myself to flow through the grief process, accepting all the stages so I might achieve peace and acceptance in my life. Help me learn to be gentle with myself and others while we go through this very human process of healing. Wow. Another powerful message about grieving, something we're not necessarily taught in school, the typical school system of the grieving process, that it is stages. Denial, like it said, being the first one, and it said usually the hardest one to get through, but once you do get through it, you move on to anger, and then bargaining, sadness, and finally acceptance. And that was the message yesterday, is transforming till you get to that point of acceptance. And learning that in recovery, so it says sometimes even good changes can bring loss and consequently grief. So we can learn to help ourselves and others by understanding and becoming familiar with that and the stages, and understanding that it's normal to flounder through, kicking and screaming, with a lot of back and forth movement until we reach the peaceful state called acceptance. That is this very human process of healing, and that's what it looks like, and that's okay, as long as we are processing it out, so we're not storing or trapping those emotions somewhere in our body. God, help me open myself to the process of grieving my losses, and help me learn to be gentle with myself and others while we go through this very human process of healing. Powerful. Let me know what y'all think. See y'all tomorrow.